Bonjour. Okay, I'm going to give you guys back. This. Et en général, très bon pour le quiz. Les réponses sont numéro 1, elle s'habille. Numéro 2, on se lave les mains. So Hayden, you put nous, which is not a bad response, but it would have to be nous lavons les mains for number 2. And the pronoun is on, donc on se lave les mains. Numéro 3, on se dépêche ou il se dépêche. Numéro 4, elle se maquille. Numéro 5, tu te laves. Tu te laves. I can't put passwords in and talk at the same time. My password. Et numéro 6, une bonne réponse. D'abord, je me lave, puis je m'habille. D'abord, je me brosse les dents, puis je me rends au travail. D'abord, je me réveille et puis je me lève. So anything that is in that first and second with a phenomenal. And finally, Johnny Depp est plus beau que George Clooney, ou George Clooney est plus vieux que Johnny Depp. Des choses comme ça. Let me remind you that there is a French club and that the meeting is on the 26th. And let's see, I don't know if it's going to be in the room next door to here, 206 at 5:30. So I'll remind you again, that is Thursday in room 206 at 5:30. And we're going to start chapter 5 today. So chapter 5, Français interactif. So on the one hand, I'm happy that people are staying away if they are sick. On the other hand, it makes it harder to teach because I have to record all my classes. So if you've been exposed, you're supposed to let me know. And voila, I will send you the link. Okay, so Bon Appetit is the name of the chapter. But regardez le début.
Since I've been here in France, I've been eating pain au chocolat, which is a croissant with chocolate in the middle, tarte aux pommes, which is just an apple tart, and today I'm eating frangipane. It's my first time to eat frangipane. Frangipane. Frangipane, as you can see, has an almond paste in the middle of just a croissant with a little powdered sugar on top. In this chapter, you're going to learn all about French food, the words for French food, and how to order French food. So, bon appetit.
So frangipane is actually, it's the almond filling that goes in croissant, and it goes in French king cakes. When it is spring semester, I usually make or buy a French king cake burger. The Louisiana king cake. So the French one is called a galette des rois. Galette des rois. OK. Nous allons commencer avec le vocabulaire. Alors, dans le chapitre 5, Quand vous vous mettez à table, vous avez un verre. En France, le verre est pour l'eau ou le vin. So the French do not drink soft drinks with food. The French just drink water or wine with food. And basically anything else would be weird. Vous avez une tasse pour le café, par exemple. Un bowl. The French drink coffee out of a bowl, which is different from how we drink it. We drink it out of a mug. Let's see if I can find the bowl. Cafe. French breakfast consists of a bowl of coffee and a baguette. If you're feeling fancy. You can, but you hold the bowl and drink it. Yeah. But yeah, it's perfectly fine to, if it's super hot, to sip it out of the spoon. You ask old people in Louisiana who have a French background, generally they do not eat the American breakfast, which is like eggs and bacon and grits. If you're Southern, they'll eat, even in Louisiana, bread and coffee, or like beignets and coffee, some kind of starch and coffee. Ask your grandparents if they're Frenchy, what they have for breakfast. Okay, vous avez aussi un couteau, a knife, une fourchette. So fourchette has a word within it that you see almost every day. What parish are we in? La Fouche. So what would the Fouche have to do with, it's a fork. So Bayou La Fouche is the fork in the, well, let's look and see where that fork happens. Bayou La Fouche. Bayou La Fouche. So what is it a fork off of? So here's the Mississippi and here's Bayou La Fouche. So this is the bayou right here, Highway 1. And so it's a fouche off of the Mississippi. So if we hadn't levied up the Mississippi, someday maybe the bayou would have maybe become rivers jump their beds and made of, but now it's being controlled by the Board of Levees and the engineers who control those things. So une fourchette is a fork, a little fork. A fourche is a big fork. Un cuillère, la cuisine, un repas, le petit déjeuner, le déjeuner, le goûter, le dîner. Okay, so quantities, if you have un verre de, it's going to be un verre de vin. If you have a tasse de café, tasse de thé, un bowl de café au lait. So you put a little de after those sort of measurements to say what it is of. Un verre de vin. Ok, voici des fruits. Vous avez des fruits, des bananes, des cerises, des citrons, des fraises, des framboises, des oranges, des pamplemousses, des pêches, des poires, des pommes, du raisin, des légumes, de l'ail, des asperges, des aubergines, des carottes, des champignons, des choux, des concombres, des courgettes, des épinards, des haricots verts, de la laitue, des oignons, des petits pois. So one of my students last year said that their mother always says petit pois, like it's just the way they refer to peas in her family. Des poireaux. So in the US, the poireaux are not typically eaten a lot. Do you know what leeks are? They're these guys. Spelled differently. So yeah, how to clean leeks. They get dirt caught in their leaves, and so it kind of almost looks like a sugar cane. So you have to clean it really well before you cook it. It's a very mild vegetable. Let's go back. Is there anything else that like you don't recognize? Des aubergines. Vous mangez des aubergines? Eggplant. So that is something in Louisiana that has a weird name. It's not called an aubergine in Louisiana, it's called a brème. And there was another one that I was like, oh yeah, that's not the way it's said in Louisiana. Oh yeah, this guy, this is so crazy. Pamplemousse is grapefruit, but in Louisiana it's called a chadec. And I'll explain later what that means. So in chadec is a pamplemousse in Louisiana. Des petits pois, des poireaux, des poivrons verts, des pommes de terre, de la salade, des tomates. Okay, so the butcher is the la boucherie. In Louisiana, what does la boucherie mean? Do any of your families traditionally have a boucherie? No. Sounds familiar though? Okay, let's just do a Google Louisiana boucherie and see what comes up. Boucherie. So from what I understand, it is a South Louisiana rural tradition. And a student of mine once took me to her home in La Rose, and she's like, this is the pig my uncle keeps for the boucherie. And sure enough, it was this pig that was in front of their house, and poor pig was like very confined. And she's like, yeah, they fatten them up, and she happened to be vegan, so she felt very bad for this pig. So it is just the act of slaughtering a pig, and it's done all over Louisiana. So it means something slightly different here because it's pig, whereas boucherie en France, ça veut dire où on achète. It is chez le boucher, so the boucher is the butcher, and the boucherie is just the store. Ok, donc chez le boucher, on achète de la viande, du bœuf, du porc, du veau, du canard, de la dinde, du poulet. So that dinde has a very interesting story. So turkey is not an animal found in Europe at all. Do you see any country in that little, so Turkey is an American, South American, North American thing. Do you see a country, the name of a country in that word, de la dinde? You have to look kind of hard to sort it out. Okay, so you know how the Caribbean is called the West Indies? Have you heard that? So de la dinde means from India. Today, what does India mean? Where's India? That way, way east. So in the day, it was from India because what did Columbus think he found when he came to the New World? He thought he was in the East. He thought he was in India, maybe China, maybe Japan. So everything was from India for a while. The same thing with a guinea pig is a cochon d'Inde. It's a pig from India, but India also meant the New World, meaning North or South America. So de la dinde. Yes. What country? Taiwan. It is not a country, it is a city that has some kind of like independent status. They speak Taiwanese, which is basically Chinese, but because, let's see, officially it is the Republic of China. Yeah, it's a complicated situation there. So it's China, but it has different rules than China. And they say that their Chinese, the language is a little different, and it's an island. So why do you ask? John? No, is he from Taiwan? Okay, so it's confusing though. It's a hard one. It is a city, but it is not a city. Like it's just a small island that has its own status. So yeah. I was wondering if you were asking because Taiwan is in the process, everything that is Formosa means Taiwanese. And so like you've heard of Formosan termites, but there's also a company that wants to set up shop in Louisiana that's called Formosa, and it's Taiwanese because in Taiwan and China they make a lot of things, and so Formosan Plastics wants to put in a plastic factory, but they're being stymied because guess what? That's also called Cancer Alley. Did you guys know that? You don't? You've never heard of Cancer Alley? Oh my gosh. How do you live here and not know about Cancer Alley? Well, for one thing, it's not completely certain that incidences of cancer are higher in Louisiana, but Cancer Alley, it's that red area right there. So it's sort of like Baton Rouge going towards the river parishes. Let's see if Formosan, so notice how many plastic and chemical companies are all around here. And I don't see Formosan because they're being told you can't do it because you're going to emit all kinds of chemicals. Anywho, let's go back to French. Okay. So then there's the charcuterie. To make things more complicated, charcuterie is just pork products. So it's the pork butcher. Chez le charcutier, on achète du jambon, du pâté, des saucisses, des saucissons. And we kind of have a charcuterie here in Thibodeau called Bourgeois Meat Market. Are you related to them, Tristan? No, have you ever heard of it? So Bourgeois Meat Market, they mostly sell pork products, although they do have beef too. But like anything that's, most sausages are pork, like boudin, hogshead cheese. Have you guys ever had that? Yeah? No? It's like pate. I love it, but some people don't. Pate. It's similar. We can do a little pate. It's similar, but hogshead cheese is a little bit more like, so that's pate. It's very spreadable, and hogshead cheese is a little, it's like they sort of put everything in there. It's called tête de fromage in French. Like, it exists. Tête de fromage. And so it's like chunkier, more. And I like all those things, but like a lot of you don't like it. A lot of people are totally grossed out by pate. And have you heard the expression, if you don't want to know how the sausage is made, stay out of the kitchen? Because it, like, the sausage is made of bits and pieces, and who knows what goes in sausage. Okay, so this in France, it might be called a charcuterie, although their thing is beef. So anyway, it's a boucherie. But charcuterie technically is just pork, no beef. À la poissonnerie, on achète du poisson, du saumon, de la sole, du thon. So like salmon, sole, those are sort of Atlantic fishes. So in France, the fish is different, but saumon is universal, like all over the world, people eat saumon. Then you have l'épicerie. And it's true that people go to these different shops. If you're French here in 2021, you might go to the poissonnerie and then the boucherie and then the épicerie. So the épicerie is more of a grocery store that specializes in packaged things and dry goods. So chez l'épicier, on trouve des céréales, des œufs, des noix, des produits laitiers, du beurre, du lait, du fromage, du yaourt, de la glace, des épices, du sel, du poivre, de l'huile. So that is an odd word. It looks like oil, l'huile, but it's pronounced very differently. Du vinaigre, de la mayonnaise, de la moutarde. So I was talking to a friend who lived in France when she was your age, college student, and she had only lived in like a small town in New York. And she remembers telling her French family, we don't have open air markets at all in the United States. It's not the way it works, but actually there are lots of cities that have open air markets. The difference is that every single city in France has a couple of markets and specialized little shops. And so what do I mean by markets? The big famous one in Paris is Les Halles. And it's so inside of Les Halles, there's all these shops and specialty items. That is not giving you the picture of Les Halles, Marché, Paris. So Let's see if we can get some images of that. So you're gonna have people who sell things that are like vegetable-y and fruits, but you're also gonna have shops in there. And so the French market in New Orleans is like a lame version of Les Halles. None of these pictures are great of Les Halles. I'm just gonna go like this. We're gonna go marché au Lyon. So every city has a marché. And so this is more of what it looks like. People's outside selling their goods. Sometimes it's covered, sometimes it's not. And it gets more, so sometimes there's a daily market with fewer sellers, and sometimes like every Tuesday, there might be when everybody is out there selling. Okay, voila, le marché. Then there's the boulangerie and the pâtissière, or pâtisserie. So it's really too bad that Amaya is not here. So boulangerie is bread more than anything. Sometimes they're together, boulangerie et pâtisserie. So boulangerie is mostly bread. This is a boulangerie, boulanger pâtissier. So they do both bread and cakes with cream in it. Whereas in the United States, it's just bakery. So if I could put in here just pâtisserie, it's gonna be like things that are they're cream filled, or they have some kind of soft element to them, not just bread. There's this other category that we don't distinguish called viennoiserie. Viennoiserie, it's a kind of pastry. And so it's everything that is made with puff pastry, like croissant, pain au chocolat, etc. Very hard to make. Like those are the specialists who do viennoiserie. Ok, donc chez le boulanger, on trouve du pain, une baguette, une brioche. So the famous let them eat cake that Marie Antoinette said that the peasants need to do. She did not say let them eat cake, it was brioche. And that is what king cake is in Louisiana. It's a brioche. So brioche is just a kind of bread that has more eggs in it. Doesn't that kind of look like the king cake texture? So let them eat cake was actually qu'ils mangent de la brioche. Donc brioche, croissant, petit pain. Then chez le pâtissier, on trouve des pâtisseries, un gâteau, gâteau au chocolat, une tarte, tarte aux pommes, tarte au citron, tarte à la fraise. Then there's the whole concept of cafe. So in America, a cafe is Starbucks, but in France, a cafe also serves alcoholic beverages and food. So on commande, you can order des boissons non alcoolisées, du café, du thé, du Coca-Cola, de l'eau minérale, du jus de fruits, des boissons alcoolisées, de la bière, du champagne, du vin blanc, du vin rosé, du vin rouge, un jambon beurre. So this is what a on sandwiches in France. It's very different from our notion of a sandwich in the United States. Jambon beurre. So it's about the most classically French sandwich I can think of. So the one with the lettuce and stuff on it is not as classic as this one. It is butter, ham on a baguette. That is all. So it's good level beginner. So all you really do, it says it's endangered. It's on the endangered list. It's not as popular as it used to be. So that's it. It's just bread, butter, jambon. French food traditionally is simple. Okay. Un croque-monsieur. Alors, qu'est-ce que c'est un croque-monsieur? Monsieur. C'est une autre sorte de sandwich. So it's a little closer to what we call a sandwich. Yep, exactly, like a hot ham and cheese. They are super good. I wish I had a way to make you guys a croque monsieur. A croque madame has an egg on it, so it's the same deal. It says, well, I guess Amaya will get the video, but anyway, croque madame is the same as a croque monsieur, more or less, but an egg on top. So lots of cultures stick an egg on something. It's like a quick way of getting more protein. Vous avez une quiche. So everyone seems to know what quiche is nowadays. But when I started teaching at Nichols, no one knew what this was. Do you guys know what quiche is? More or less? It's kind of like a pizza. It's like a cross between a pizza and. You're right. That's a good description of it. It's like a pie, but so quiche Lorraine traditionally has ham in it. So let's see what our recette de quiche Lorraine. So ham is could be bacon. It could be what the French call lardon. So popular dish. And let's just, there's the recipe. So it takes eggs, cheese, du lait, du jambon. Actually, I'm not sure if that's du jambon. Du bacon. I don't know what that little crispy thing is. Let's look at the ingredients. Just bacon, cheese, eggs. Oh well, maybe it's ham and bacon. That would be fancy. Okay, une omelette. So an omelette is not a breakfast food. Aux États-Unis, nous mangeons des omelettes pour le petit déjeuner. En France, non. L'omelette est le dîner ou le souper. So remember. Exactement. Alors, au restaurant, on commande. So one orders or you order an apéritif. So that is when you drink something that an apéritif can be alcoholic or not. It's usually if you're like a grown-up alcoholic, but some people don't like alcohol a lot. So it could be a coca, it could be anything. This is very confusing for Americans. What is it? What is an entree in English? It's the main dish. What is it in French? All right. So it's the plat principal is the main dish. It also is sometimes called, I like the name, this fancy name, the plat de résistance. Plat de résistance. So it just means the main dish too, the main course. So you can say le plat de résistance ou le plat principal. C'est la même chose. Plat principal. Aucune différence. Main course, main dish. Vous avez un dessert et une boisson. So the order of food in France, if you're having like the whole shebang of a big fancy lunch or dinner, you'll have apéritif, entrée, plat principal, un dessert, and fromage. So fromage can come before or after the dessert, but you eat cheese after dinner in France, which is different from the way we do it. Et voici quelques plats typiquement français, des entrées, des crudités. That name always made me laugh, crudité, because it sounds so crude. Crudité means raw things, crudité. Voilà, un plat de crudité. So that could be an entrée, un plat de crudité, vegetable platters. For sure, it's not so much from France as it is Catholic, because if you are Catholic, wine is part of the sacrament. You drink it at Mass, a little tiny bit, right? And so it's so Catholicism is baked into French culture that it is part of the culture to have wine around. Today, not very many people are Catholic practicing in France, but the culture remains the same. So whether Louisiana is 20%, 30, 40% Catholic, which I want to find out now, it doesn't really matter. It still maintains the Catholic traditions, which also is the same in Spain. So let's see, percent of Catholics. I have heard, fully vaccinated, I don't want to know, percent of Catholics, Louisiana. I've heard that in particular, Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes are the most Catholic parishes in Louisiana. So I'm guessing that we're, 38%. So do you know what the rest of Louisiana would be if 38% of us are Catholic? Yep. So there's a lot of Baptists, little Pentecostal, right? There's some Lutherans and some Methodists and some other things, but yeah, 38% is a huge percentage. So let's just to give you an idea of why we say Louisiana is very Catholic. Let's look at most Catholic states by percentage. New Jersey, see, we're not, wow. Why aren't we on a? Yeah, maybe. It's a hard thing to measure too. I have always heard though that Rhode Island is the most Catholic, but the Catholic Church is shrinking. Yeah, true. Now let's say in France, number of practicing because everybody's Catholic in France, but very few people practice it. Practicing Catholics in France. Only 15% say they're practicing. So it's kind of a hard thing to measure because people are culturally a religion sometimes. So we are culturally Catholic. It comes from the French and from the Spanish. Ok, donc les plats principaux traditionnels, bœuf bourguignon, le coq au vin, un steak frites. Des desserts traditionnels en France. Vous avez de la mousse au chocolat, crème caramel, crème brûlée, fondant au chocolat. So crème caramel is one of my favorite dishes. Again, it's like super plain really when you look at it. It is just like a little bit of flan and sugar melted on top of it. Totally luscious. Crème brûlée, c'est très semblable au crème caramel. So crème brûlée is the exact same thing as crème caramel. Don't you wish that we could somehow go and eat all these things? So the crème brûlée, it's the same ingredients, but the brûlée means burnt. So in Louisiana, notice there's brûlés everywhere. Road brûlée, town, this and that brûlée. Have you ever noticed that? So it means burnt. What do you think they burnt in the brûlée? Cane, yep. And so crème brûlée is burnt sugar on top. Okay. And fondant au chocolat. So fondue means melted. So this means melted chocolate, rich chocolate. Can you tell I love food? Like I want to look at it all and think about it. The fondant au chocolat, voilà, fondant. This kind of thing has names that are like kind of not appealing to me in English, like orgasm chocolate cake and things like that. It's a little bit like a brownie. Ok, donc voici des expressions de quantité, un peu de, assez de, beaucoup de, trop de, une cuillère de, une bouteille de, un pichet de. Everything is in metric. Un litre de, 50 grammes de, un kilo de, un morceau de, une tranche de, une boîte de, un rôti de, une côtelette de porc, une dizaine de. And we are also going to look at some adjectives in this chapter. So you délicieux, délicieuse. You've already learned frais because il fait frais, it's cool out. Et aujourd'hui, il fait super chaud. Épicé, so that is one thing French food is not. La cuisine française n'est pas épicée. La cuisine louisianaise est bien épicée, n'est-ce pas? Haché, salé, sucré. And so haché, also in the Louisiana landscape, there is a town called Pointe-à-la-Hache. So Pointe-à-la-Hache is a town. Haché means chopped. So what do you think an ash is? It can be a noun. Voici an ash. An ash. Voilà. C'est bon? Donc, et on dit bœuf haché. So ground meat in French is haché. Salé, sucré. So that is like a way of distinguishing things. You can have crêpe. So everybody knows crêpe. Crêpe sucré. And so a crêpe sucré would be a dessert crêpe. But a crêpe salée, crêpe au chocolat, crêpe à la fraise. So the sucré is sugar, salé is salty. And so you can have a crêpe as a, like that looks like a croque madame. Crêpe salé is like a main dish kind of crêpe. Okay, donc sucré salé. So you can describe yourself as someone who's, moi je suis plutôt sucré, moi je suis plutôt salé, meaning I like sweet things or I'm more of a savory person. Moi je suis plutôt sucré. Vous êtes sucré ou salé? Salé. Catherine, et toi? Sucré ou salé? Sucré. Tristan? Salé. Intéressant. Okay. So en français, on a faim, on a soif. J'ai faim, j'ai soif. Je bois du café, je bois du vin, je bois de lait, je bois de l'eau. Okay, so I remember mentioning this to you quickly that déjeuner all over the world means breakfast, but in France it means lunch. And it's become a popular name. I have in 2 different classes, 2 separate students whose name is déjeuner. And I almost want to tease them and say, hey, lunch, come here, but I'm afraid that might not go well. So déjeuner, dîner, you can also say souper. Petit déjeuner is the French way to say breakfast. Louisiana says déjeuner. Faire le marché, faire la cuisine, prendre un repas. So most things in France you don't eat. So what's the verb for eat? Manger. You prends. Donc je prends un thé, je prends un café, je prends dîner, je prends déjeuner. So you prends more than eat. On peut faire le vaisselle. Dans ce chapitre, on va parler de grossir ou faire un régime. It cheers me up that the French are getting fatter too. Ils grossissent, comme nous, les Américains. Maigrir, to lose weight. Choisir, finir, grandir. So grandir means to grow up. It doesn't mean to grow out, because grossir means to gain weight, which is also a common last name in Louisiana. There are lots of people with the last name Gros, which means big. Grandir. Okay, then we have these IR verbs, obéir à, réfléchir à, réussir à. So you need to put the preposition à after obey, to think, to succeed. Think of to succeed at, to think of, to obey to. So it's in English, the prepositions change, but in French, it's always going to be the a. We also have these RE verbs, croire, prendre, apprendre, apprendre, comprendre, surprendre. So what do you notice about all of those? They all have prendre, and they're all conjugated the same way. We'll do that later in the chapter. What we're going to do now is do a little listening exercise. And so I'm going to give this to you, and then I'm going to ask you to do it between now and Wednesday. We're going to start today. And so start it today. And then I'll show you where it is. So there are some fruits and vegetables that are not on the list that we just learned. So par exemple, abricot, c'est assez facile, abricot, parce que c'est un repas abricot. Vous avez aussi le melon, la framboise, la nectarine, l'orange, la pamplemousse, la pêche blanche, la pêche jaune, la poire, les pommes pomelo, rose, la pomme, et le raisin. So I want you to check the ones that you hear. Okay, so we'll just do the first one, then I'm going to move us to another listening exercise. Oops. Get out of French code here. Français interactif.
La banane. Là, c'est le pomelos. L'abricot. Là, c'est la pêche blanche. Vous avez la nectarine. La pêche jaune. Là, c'est le melon. C'est charentais. Hein? Après, c'est la salade.
On va réécouter.
La banane. Là, c'est le pomelos. L'abricot. Là, c'est la pêche blanche. Vous avez la nectarine. La pêche jaune. Là, c'est le melon. C'est charentais. Hein? Après, c'est la salade.
OK. Est-ce qu'elle a dit abricot? Oui, non? Oh. Oui, non? OK.
La banane.
La banane.
Là, c'est le pomelos.
Ce sont des pomelos.
L'abricot.
L'abricot.
Là, c'est la pêche blanche.
Ça, c'est la pêche blanche.
Vous avez la nectarine.
Vous avez la nectarine.
La pêche jaune.
La pêche jaune.
Là, c'est le melon. C'est charentais.
Ça, c'est le melon charentain.
Hein? Après, c'est la salade.
OK. Alors, est-ce qu'elle a dit abricot? Oui. Est-ce qu'elle a dit la banane? Oui. Est-ce qu'elle a dit la cerise? Non. Le citron? La fraise? La framboise? Non. Le melon charentais? La nectarine? L'orange? La pamplemousse? La pêche blanche? La pêche jaune? La poire? Les pommes roses? Oui. La pomme? On n'a pas dit la pomme? Non, OK. Le raisin. OK, donc qu'est-ce que c'est ces différentes choses qu'elle n'a pas dit? Vous avez... Vous avez la framboise. C'est une framboise. Moi, j'adore les framboises. Alors, c'est quelque chose à boire, ça c'est sûr, mais... Framboise. Voilà. Donc, ça c'est une framboise. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres choses que vous n'avez pas compris? La cerise, ça va, cerise? Le raisin, c'est intéressant. Le raisin, c'est très important. You know why else wine is important in France? It's because France was also a colony of the Romans. The Romans went to France, set up shop. Everywhere the Romans went and left the language, all of those languages are called Romance languages. So you have Spanish, French, Portuguese, they're all Romance languages. The Romans worshipped this guy. Dionysus. I'm not sure I'm spelling it right in French. Le raisin. So he is Bacchus or Dionysus. So the Romans called him Bacchus, the Greeks called him Dionysus. He is the god of wine, the god of des raisins. So that was something that the Romans, they didn't bring it, but it's so part of their culture, a wine god, that it became part of French culture. So we also have that. We're sort of Louisiana doesn't see itself this way as being like a Latin place. And anytime I say Latin, it's because the Romans spoke Latin, but in many ways, the culture in Louisiana is more similar to Latin America. It's Latinate, it's Spanish, it's French. Because actually the food in Louisiana is not French, except for like boudin. Did you see rice as an important thing to eat? Did you see any boiled seafood? Did you see any kind of, anything that resembles like jambalaya or a gumbo in the description of classic French food? The food here is not French. However, I think that Louisiana and its obsession with food is very important to the culture, that part is a little bit French. All right, I want us to watch a video that is not in French. You're going to be confused, but let's just see how you do. It's not in French. It's not in English. It's some French and some French and some Creole. So here we go.
Grammarly can help you write quickly and confidently, so you never have to slow down at work.
Bonjour, mon nom c'est Christophe André, bonsoir la John. Ça fait aujourd'hui, nous avons joué un petit jeu. Vous allez dire une parole pour deviner, créole la légende, et vous autres baguettes pour deviner ça. OK? Là, nous reste dans YouTube, nous c'est l'historien et chercheur, toujours visé, et moi l'aime ça me fait. Vous autres introduire vous autres, qui c'est vos autres noms, ayez vous autres restes, tout ça.
Bon, je m'appelle Saskia et je suis étudiante en psychologie clinique. Je souhaite déterminer.
Okay, so what is she speaking? French. What is he speaking? Louisiana Creole.
Mon doctorat et ben, je suis passionnée des langues. Je parle 4 langues, anglais, français, créole haïtien et espagnol.
Ayons.
Alors, salut, moi c'est Marc, je suis de Montréal, je suis photographe, programmeur web et je suis un peu passionné de tout. Et vous pouvez trouver ma chaîne YouTube Vomir avec 2 N, même chose pour Instagram.
Bonjour à tous, moi je m'appelle Alexis, je suis français, je suis né à Cognac, dans le sud-ouest de la France, et je vis en Italie. Je parle 4 ou 5 langues, dont le sarde qui est ma passion, et vous pouvez trouver quelques vidéos sur la langue sarde sur ma chaîne YouTube.
Voyons, Cognac.
C'est bon.
Ça fait bon. Alors, on commence?
Mm-hmm.
OK. Première parole. C'est un fruit qui est orange. Dehors, c'est orange. Et sur la chair, c'est moitié orange, moitié rouge. Des fois, c'est douce. Ça sent la Chine.
C'est un fruit.
C'est un fruit.
Est-ce que ce fruit il a un noyau à l'intérieur?
Non. Il y en a plusieurs. Mais c'est des tout petits.
Ah, donc
C'est des tout petits.
des pépins ou des noyaux.
C'est plutôt des pépins.
À l'extérieur, c'est orange et à l'intérieur, c'est rouge.
Ça dépend,
Ça
oui.
dépend. Okay.
Ça peut être rouge, ça peut être orange, rouge.
Est-ce que c'est quelque chose qu'on mange quand il fait très chaud? Des haltères.
Ouais, tout capable de boire ce dans l'été, toute l'année.
Ok. Et les pépins sont toujours noirs?
Non.
Ah, d'accord. Et donc, est-ce que la chair peut être orange et les pépins plutôt blanchâtres? Ok, on va avoir compris.
Saskia, vous avez des questions?
Est-ce que l'y en est? Est-ce que c'est un merde? Est-ce que c'est...
Donc, moi, c'est quelqu'un qui parle créole. Les cadettes amères, oui.
Ok,
Les cadettes de plus aussi.
Ah non, du coup, non, j'ai pas compris. Si c'est amer, on ne sait pas du tout ce que
Moi,
je
je suis
pensais.
sûr, je sais c'est quoi, mais j'ai Genre, je connais pas le mot, genre, c'est. Ah,
Yes.
Die kan dit amer, die kan dit douce.
J'ai une idée, mais on verra.
wow.
D'eau douce.
On dirait que je sais absolument, je sais c'est quoi le fruit, mais je connais pas le mot, donc je pense que j'ai rien à écrire. Ah, non.
Est-ce que c'est une dernière question? Est-ce que c'est quelque chose qu'on coupe en deux et généralement on met du sucre dessus et on doit tailler les quartiers méticuleusement? Ok.
Tout à fait tout ça.
On peut extraire le jus.
Tout à fait tout ça, oui.
Ok. Bon, je change de mot.
Le cas, oui. Vous parlez?
Si.
Chabec.
Pamplemousse, c'est quoi?
Pamplemousse. Ah, moi, c'est un dessin de pamplemousse, ok?
C'était pas loin, Marc.
J'en étais sûr, mais écoute, j'ai complètement.
Donc, qu'est-ce que c'est le mot qu'il a dit en créole? Quel était le fruit? Le fruit, c'était une pomme, c'était... Regarde. Pamplemousse, exactement. Shadek, ok. Donc, en fait, le shadek est le mot et c'est complètement hallucinant. Pourquoi ça s'appelle un shadek? Donc, nous allons regarder un peu plus, hein, shadek.
J'ai une idée, mais on verra.
Wow.
D'eau douce.
On dirait que je sais absolument, je sais c'est quoi le fruit.
Méticuleusement. Ok.
Tout à fait tout ça.
On peut extraire le jus.
Tout à fait tout ça, oui.
Ok. Bon, je change de mot.
Le cas, oui. Vous parlez?
Si.
Chabec.
Pamplemousse, c'est quoi?
Pamplemousse. Ah, moi, c'est un dessin de pamplemousse, ok?
C'était pas loin, Marc.
J'en étais sûr, mais écoute, j'ai complètement oublié le mot. Français 0.
Si vous n'aviez pas dit que c'était amer, moi j'avais marqué melon au début. Je pensais que c'était le
Oui,
melon.
C'était un bon question, Saskia. Vous avez des Shadek dans le crayon?
Oui,
En
Shadek.
Haïti?
Shadek. Mais Shadek pour moi-même sont les plus jeunes.
So what is he saying? What are they talking about? This one here, and they're like, Shadek, vous autres, vous dites Shadek aussi? So she's from Haiti, right? And so they also use the word Shadek. But this is where I don't think he gets into the explanation, but it becomes completely crazy. The origin of the name is from somebody who was named Mr. Shatek, just Mr. It was an English name, Shatek, and it was somehow adopted into Haitian, French, and Louisiana French and Creole as Shadek. So to this day, people call pamplemousse in Louisiana Shadek, but the French don't know this. The French in France, Shadek, like this guy's like, what? And the Montreal guy's like, oh, he can't even remember the word for pamplemousse. So what does that tell you about Louisiana if the words are more similar to Haiti than they are to France or Canada? So say it again for me, because the language here is an 18th and 17th century variety of French. So here's Haiti, right over here. Poor Haiti, it just had an earthquake. It just never, ever, this country does not get a break. So when Louisiana was founded was the end of the 17th century. Haiti and Cuba are literally the first places that Columbus goes to. So when the New World is discovered, Columbus in 1492 lands here and says, it's the Indies. Later on, from France, in the 17th century, this is Nova Scotia, so this is the Acadians. So Tristan, this might be your ancestors. They left from here and they go over here. However, Haiti is complicated because far more Haitians came to Louisiana than people from here ever came here. Haiti was called Saint-Domingue. There was a revolution. They got rid of slavery. They kicked the plantation owners out and wanted to continue with slavery. And where did they come? They came here. And we're talking not like a couple thousand, like 10,000. A lot of people with that heritage ended up here. Am I the first person to tell you this news? That Saint-Domingue had a revolution and that they came here? So what's sad is that they were the second republic in the New World. So a republic meaning a place where there is a government that they say is going to be ruled with representation of the people. So who's the first republic in the New World? It's the United States, 1776, and then Haiti, 1792. No one knows this. No one cares. No one cares that like Haiti had this project, this huge win. They beat the French. No one knows, very few people know that all of these people with Saint-Domingue heritage ended up in Louisiana. And interestingly, a bunch of them ended up in Philadelphia. Why do you think they went to Philadelphia? What would be the difference between in the 1790s, the difference between Philadelphia and Louisiana? So the United States has just become a state, a country in 1776. Louisiana in the 1790s was what? We were not yet the United States, we were Spanish. So it's so complicated. We weren't even French, we were Spanish. So in 1776, it was just the 13 colonies. So like 3,000 Saint-Domingue people went to Philadelphia, and the slaves that had been slaves in Haiti were free. Right, we didn't even have the Louisiana Purchase. However, the Haitians kept trickling in. So when those Haitians came in the early 1800s, they came from like the late 1790s to 1820, in that period, tens of thousands of them. And the people that had been freed in Haiti, by that time we were America, and slavery was the law in the South. So people who had been freed in Haiti were re-enslaved here. That sucks, huh? Imagine like, I'm free. Oh no, now I'm not free. And so you can say, why did they come here? It's like Afghanistan. Why do people need to leave Afghanistan? It's falling apart. And Haiti, in that revolution, the planter class fell apart, and some slaves said, I'm gonna go with my master. Some said, I'm going with the master. Okay, see you guys on Wednesday. Do 2 pages of this. Okay, so the rest of this and all of this page, and I will send it to you where to find those videos. Did we do this in 102 and 101?
We did more like in person.
Yeah, so now I'm gonna ask you to step it up a little